Hi, welcome back to my channel. By now, if you're a property owner in BC, you should have received your BC assessment. Now, keep in mind these are BC assessment values and not the market value of your property. Completely different animals. The BC assessment, the reason we have that is so cities and municipalities can use that assessed value to determine your property taxes. Now, it's my guess that the value that BC assessment is put on your property is not the same value that you felt your property is worth. That's very common. They are seldom very accurate. Anyways, the question is, you can't appeal it if you don't agree with it. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, whether it's worthwhile appealing your assessment or not. Because in some cases, it definitely is. Anyways, here's 4 reasons why BC assessment is not the market value of your property. Let's get into it. Okay, reason number 1 why your BC assessment is not the true value of your property is they're always out of date. So in January of each year, we receive our BC assessment. Woo! But the value or the valuation they come up for your property actually is pegged back on July 1st of the previous year. So they're at least 6 months old when you first receive them. And 6 months old is about as young as they get. Let me just give you another example. Let's say, for example, you have been looking at a property in December of last year, December 2023. And you looked at the assessed value of that property. Well, the assessed value of that property is actually 18 months old at that point in time. So it's completely out of date. I've got a couple of graphs here. Let's have a look at them. Okay, so the first graph is from Oak Bay. So what I've done here is, these are real MLS statistics. And I've just used single family houses in Oak Bay. Back in July, the average price of a house in Oak Bay was $1,799,100. In December, average value of a property in Oak Bay was $1,776,200. So you can see the values have dropped. So that's what I'm getting at, is that when we receive the assessments in January, they're already out of date because the prices have been dropping right now. So they're not accurate. I've got a second graph here. Let's have a look at it. So this one's even a bit more interesting. And this is what I was saying. If you're looking at an assessment in December of 2023, the actual valuation date is back to July of 2022. So that's what I mean when I say it gets 18 months out of whack here. And you can tell by looking at the graph, there's been quite a change in the market. The BC assessment, the older it gets, the less accurate in most cases it's going to become. Let's use the stock market as an analogy. So if you're buying a stock today, you wouldn't go back to July 1st of last year and look at the stock price and think that you're going to get it at the same price today. That would be absurd. Well, that's the same thing with the BC assessment. It's first of all, it's not particularly accurate, but it becomes even less accurate because it's always out of date. Okay, reason number 2 on the gold standard why the BC assessment is not the value of your property. Appraisers do not look at BC assessment and use that in any form to evaluate your property. They may use it to look and see what size the lot size is, but that's not it. It's not used for comparison purposes to determine the value of real estate. How appraisers do work is they look at comparable sales of similar houses in comparable areas, and that's how they determine value. And when they're doing an appraisal, they do not use the BC assessment. Reason number 3, if you own a property and it hasn't, you've owned it for a number of years, let's say it's not uncommon, some people own their properties 20 years, then it'd be really unlikely that your assessment is very accurate, unless somebody from BC Assessment's done a tour of your property. And believe me, that sometimes does happen. In most cases, they drive by your property. I mean, I've had them actually, approach me about wanting to go through a property, and I've said no, I didn't really see any value in it. But they will ask, but they can't come in without naturally your approval. But if there hasn't been a sale for a long time, then usually they're not very accurate, because partly how they can keep better up to date is, so if a house turns over every, say, let's say every 5 years, and believe me, there's lots of properties like that, there's a very good chance that the assessment is going to be a lot more accurate. Now, in condominium buildings, in most cases, the BC assessments are a lot more accurate because it's easier to compare, apples to apples. And finally, reason number 4 why BC assessment's not going to be that accurate on the true value of your property is that if you've had a lot of improvements to your property that do not require permits, and you haven't divulged to them about these improvements, they have no way of knowing about them. Improvements to kitchens and bathrooms are a really good example because quite often you do not need permits for that. So if you're not moving a sink, I think it's kind of 3 feet, or a toilet a few feet, whatever it is, you don't need permits for that. Kitchens and bathrooms, this is where a lot of value is added to properties, right? Typically, what I say to most people is, if you spend $1 renovating your bathroom or your kitchen, you're going to get $2 in return. So, it's easy to spend $30,000, $40,000 renovating a kitchen. Well, you've probably just added $80,000 to $100,000 in value. BC assessment will have no idea that that's happened, and your next assessment year they're just going to change the value based on what's happened in the market. Has there been a 3% increase, then your assessed value is probably going up 3%. If market values have dropped, then your assessed value is probably going to go down. Some other examples of improvements could be you've painted your place, the inside of it, or added new flooring. Now, if you painted the outside, BC assessment could be aware of that. And of course, that is going to add some value. Unless you've had to take out permits, let's say you're doing an addition on the back of your property that's going to be, $200,000 addition. Likely that'll add some value. So if you spent $200,000, maybe your property's gone up to another $250,000 or $300,000. BC assessment then will be aware of that because they monitor what building permits are taken out in your property, and they could make a substantial adjustment to your assessment based on that building permit. So chances are you're not going to agree with your BC assessment, but there is an appeals process. So the question is, if you don't agree with the market value that they've put, or assessed value that they've put on your property, should you appeal it? Well, if the assessed value is lower than you think, then it is lower than market value, I don't really know a good reason why you'd want to appeal it. If you can think of one, let me know. But I think if it's lower, because that's going to keep your taxes lower. Remember, if that assessed value gets adjusted higher, if you appealed it and adjusted higher, you're going to pay more property taxes. But let's say your property is, fair market value is at 1.5 million, and you get a BC assessment of 1.8. Well, that's $300,000 difference. That would be definitely worth appealing. So if you want to appeal your BC assessment, it's actually not all that difficult. Just keep in mind, you've got to do it by January 31st of this year. But what you're going to have to gather first is you want to gather some comparable sales of property in your neighborhood. But remember, we got to go back to July 1st. So, a sale that happened in December this year is not going to do you any good. If you need anything like that, please reach out to me. I'm happy to provide that. If we can make a good argument that the value of your property is less, then it's probably worthwhile on your tax bill. Just one thing to think about, because a lot of people mention this to me, because all the assessed values are readily available. BC assessment is very transparent. So you could look at your neighbor's house and look at it and find out that it's assessed considerably lower than yours. That's not a good reason to launch an appeal with. That argument's not going to hold much water. What they want to see is actual properties that have recently sold. So don't think you can look up assessed values of your neighbors and they're going to adjust it just based on that. Now, if you want to appeal, you can phone them. I'm going to put the phone number down below, but it's a toll-free number. It's 1-866-825-8322. And just make sure you have your comparable sales ready to talk to them. But you can also go online and you can fill out a form online there to start the appeal process too. So again, if your property is assessed way over what you think the value of it is, 100% worth trying to appeal for it. And again, if you need some help with some comparable sales, just ask. All part of the 2-star service. Okay, that is why the BC assessment is not the true value of your property. Any questions, any comments, please leave them in the comment sections down below. I do respond to all the comments that are left there. Got any questions? You could also call me. I'll put my phone number down below. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.